Hello
大家好，我
everyone.
是西语静婷。
This time, I'd like to continue to talk to you about prophecy and the truth about prophecy. The last episode was mainly about natural disasters, and this episode we talk about war and other topics and man-made disasters. The time of heaven has not yet come. When the time of heaven has come, it is the responsibility of the common people to focusing on how I myself can return to my true self and bringing savable lives back to the celestial world. How to make the heavenly world, the celestial firmaments more perfect. As a matter of principle, righteous cultivators do not get involved in earthly affairs, especially earthly politics. It doesn't matter if some people say I'm indifferent or not. The reason why I want to interfere now, because it's also a special time and call of a mission. For one thing, the far rectification has been completed in the cosmos bodies and in the heavens and earth. All the evil beings and factors above in cosmos bodies have been eliminated in far rectification. As one of the far rectificators, in order to complete the great mission of the celestial bodies far rectification, which is not to be disturbed by trivial matters on earth, even if the purification of part of the heavenly bodies has not been completed, one cannot begin to rectify the lowest level, the earth. Only when the purification of all celestial bodies is completed can one begin the step of far rectification on earth. I always thought that this was all the business of Dafa Masters. It was only recently that I realized that disciples who are good practitioners also have the mission of helping Dafa Master to rectify the human world, including the mission of conveying the will of heaven. Secondly, we cannot be considered good people even if we sit back and do nothing about murder and arson. A man-made disaster is when God does not send a disaster or does nothing. A man-made disaster is a tragic, bloodshed, large-scale self-murder and self-deception among people. There is nothing more deadly than war. Since ancient times, the larger-scale wars that have gone down in history are in fact changes in the heavens under which God used human notions and attachments to eliminate mankind karma. February 24, 2024, marks the official third year of the war in Ukraine. This biggest war in Europe since World War II became the starting point for the suspension of the globalization process. This unpromising, meat grinder of a war has entered its third year and reaches a stalemate. Both Ukrainian polls and Russian polls show that public opinion says that this war is a mistake. There are those who attribute Ukrainian losses on the battlefield to the cessation of U.S. military aid. What little victories were achieved on the battlefield were attributed to advanced weaponry. Some are still waiting for the results of the U.S. election in 2024, counting on electing Trump again to solve these problems. There are those who believe that behind these wars is the Chinese Communist Party propping up Russia and Hamas, counting on electing Trump again to solve these problems. The CCP has been the world's deep state government for the past several decades, manipulating government officials, legislators, and even Hollywood in various countries through the transfer of governments and organizations in Europe, Canada, Australia, Russia, Africa, etc., have all received. So isn't it better to remove the leaders of these countries, more countries to legislate to restrict dealings with China and to sanction and isolate China, and then the problem will be solved? No. In fact, ultimately, this war, including the armed conflict between Israel and Hamas that began in October 2023, cannot be said to have been instigated by the old forces of the universe, but it has emerged from a period of change between the story goes like this. As per Chinese divine culture passed on generations, we know that when the upper world produces changes and human, the pattern on earth will change. To make it easier for you to understand, I will explain this universe in which the earth resides in three parts. As human fails to rule, heaven rules. As heavens the Creator controls everything, from top to bottom, and that power is the greatest. How should it be understood? The true meaning of as human fails to rule, heaven rules is not man or lower lives stand by and not ruling. Rather, it means that one cannot rule in a good and positive direction, but instead the result is counterproductive, and it is better to let nature take its course and let heaven rule. By the same token, token, when the heavenly bodies are renewed, and the repositioned higher beings disagree on how to write the next script, it stands to reason that the Creator will decide. At the point where everything comes to an end to be extinguished, the higher beings in the lower reaches of the universe split into two factions. Neither of them knew what the Creator ultimately wanted for the future. Some of the higher beings thought that they had to control the course of globalization anyway, and didn't know how to do that. To do this, they have gone to the extent of tampering by cheating and didn't know how to do that because he only emphasizes the strength of the American elections. Now that these beings have called it quits, the other faction of higher beings sees the world today as no different than those humans of the past. According to the old way of writing human scripts, war is also a way of eliminating human karma, and America is still the world's policeman. It just so happens that Russian President Putin's nationalistic views were taken by these old gods, and so the war was ignited. It is also possible to arrange for Putin's death to stop this war. If Putin wants to survive, he really has to follow the will of God and call of people for a truce. Recently, in the eastern Ukrainian city of Avdiivka, after more than 4 months grinder of a battle finally won by Russian forces at the cost of tens of thousands of lives, it looks like the scales of the war in Ukraine are once again tipped in Russia's favor. The bipartisan stalemate in the United States over the two approaches to border refugees, unjust practices of suppressing Trump. It's actually the reaction of the upper worlds to directions of humanity's future. When people can't find a way out, all they have left is to pray to those gods of past religions. And unbeknownst to them, some of those gods they worshipped have been knocked down in the cosmic bursting and reforming. If you ask me, the pot of water that is going to quench the smoke and mirrors on earth, the earth cracking and storming the heavens, this pot of water is a figurative metaphor. If we don't solve the problem of the origin of the upper realm, the world will be in such endless chaos that it will become ungovernable. Once the momentum of cosmic righteousness arrives, once the God of the upper world, who arranged all this, receives the decree, completely discard the script of the old world's rotten drama, rearranging the future of human society according to the Creator's will. All this can only change since the Creator is on earth. Of course, the arrangement should be as humane as possible while conforming to the false standard of different levels. In fact, in the past, plays are by ways which are contrary to the ways of the universe. It has been normal to be victorious, in battle to become ruler, for territory to be seized by military seen as heroes. It's all based on the fact that the only life in the world is human, and the life in the heavens above cannot return once they fall to the earth. It's all based on the fact that the only life in the world is human. Batches and batches of elimination or elimination. How is this allowed? It's so irrational, so perverse. It's inherently corrupt. However, it's not just the government officials on earth that start and sustain those wars. It's not as if the problem is solved by exposing and eliminating the masterminds, the CCP. It is the result of the corruption of the higher beings of the old universe, which have mutated and deviated from the standards of their hierarchical living environment. They could not face up to their own prejudice and simple brutality, and gradually became like this. No level of life in history has ever dared to touch it and correct these scripts. The impure things and factors behind all this have to be removed through and through. Not that there won't be wars in human society in the future. In fact, as long as human society remains divided into small and large countries, there will be large-scale wars when the human thoughts and morality are corrupted again. That is, until the age when all eligible to return have all returned, and the remaining are only human, but now belongs to a special era of heavenly changes. The source of man is not the same as before. How can it be copied? It is too unreasonable, of course, should be changed. Take the Russian-Ukrainian war, for example. If Putin knew that the people living on the land which originally belonged to Russia came from the heavens, if the Ukrainian President Zelensky knew that the people in the territory, the country he was defending, were from heaven, they are belong to the Creator. He wouldn't dare to insist on delaying the fact once they know the people killed in the war were reincarnated by God, those who are aiding Ukraine in arms and material. Western countries led by the United States that sanctioned Russia also know that this path is a dead end, not beneficial, as more people are learning from different sources. That source of their true lives are the extraordinary. Every day that the war drags on, every person killed on the battlefield, if they are God, then whoever pushes for this war to continue, including those who provide the weapons, can't afford to pay for their sins. It is also a sign of God that the ceasefire agreement will be signed sooner or later. God will not allow the war to continue to drag on wirelessly and even expand further. If those on all sides who are in the main war continue to be obstinate, they will all be wiped out in an imminent plague. As the saying goes, fighting poison. When you look in the mirror and you think, or someone tells you that, from the color of your skin, you are of this race or that country. Actually, do you know how many lifetimes you have been reincarnated in human previous life? Why should you remember? For the sake of your ethnic identity in this life, the interests of the region of the country in which you are located, struggle for your whole life and even dedicate your life. Some of them have spared no effort to build a border wall to prevent the entry of large numbers of immigrants, causing a policy stalemate over this. You've forgotten what real life is now. How sad. The state or organization was created by God for human, to serve human. In the long course of history before their universe reforming, in the course of human propaganda pushing the dignity of the state or nation, and even put it into a position above the dignity of individual human life. This kind of conception had been forming such a powerful field in another space. In a way, it has led to the imperceptible corruption of the world. Because this field was created by the conception of the ordinary human being, is very weak. It is entirely sustained by man's strength and notions of patriotism. In fact, human life, as well as the lives of other creatures, was originally much more precious than the spiritual bodies of nations, organizations. This was generally believed in the past, when the divine culture was dominant in human society. In particular, Abhijah Anand based on old astrological astrology, predicted a possible global massacre in 2025, and wars too have been dissolved as more people wake up. People need not worry about this. In fact, it is not necessary to wait until all nations and peoples to disappear suddenly and the commonwealth and for the true nature of human to be awakened. During the transition period, people can be divided into different countries and regions, but people can move freely between different regions. People with wisdom and insight can completely eradicate the poison of patriotism from their minds by their own strength. They can completely realize that most of the people in the world has a celestial world of his or her own, and that the national attributes are as subordinate and secondary, reinforcing the national attributes of human, or even placing them above man's celestial nature, not only weakens the sense of life's self-esteem, it is the root of the collective persecution, wars and killings by regional rulers using the so-called territorial sovereignty. What the Creator wants is for the majority of people to awaken in the natural changes in the structures of the human realm, without causing much of infliction. However, there will always be many people and those who are under their spell. Especially the unforgivable ones are not willing to give away their vested interests, let alone confess their sins. They will either be converted by the sword of truth and the light, or they will be eliminated in the final havoc of the old world in the Great Plague. In the future, the status of man and the state will be completely corrected. That is to say, human beings are the soul of all matter. The interests of the state, the nation, and the country should serve for human beings. If he is too against the trend, he will be wiped out with the old world. Whether to resist or to obey is one of the choices that everyone in the world is facing today. In short, by the time this great drama involving heavens and earths reaches its grand finale, the final direction of the play is, of course, decided by the Creator. When the gods of the future universe wants to arrange the development of human society, considerations will be, for the sake of life to be able to return after falling in the lower realms. This will be reflected in every aspect of the true future. Of course, there are other factors, and I will share with you examples on this later. In terms of solving the problems of war and refugees, Only by knowing the truth and awakening more people, human morality returns. The preservation of national identity, the honor of the nation has nothing to do with the purpose of life lived on this earth. Instead, it is contrary to the arrangement of higher beings. Why cling to your notions in the name of preserving so-called traditional culture? Anyone who expects Trump to solve problems and lead people to a better future will one day realize that this is not the way to go. So it's not that everything that's traditional has to be copied into the future. In the next episode, we'll take a look at a false prophet that's been circulating and how to identify alien psychic prophecies. We're going to talk about two aspects of the future of the battle between the gods and the aliens, in terms of traditional and modern consciousness and behavior. Why mankind can only have a future if it goes back to the traditional path and returns to the divine and human nature. That's all for this time. If you want more people to know the truth and walk into a better future, please share with others. Thank you, others. Thank you, others.